right, so the border czar, Tom Homan, and the Trump administration cementing a relationship with their first major Democratic city when it comes to immigration enforcement. Following his meeting with Tom Homan, the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, says he will allow immigration and customs enforcement agents on Rikers Island, the city's largest jail. Adams believes some on the left are selling a false narrative on ICE raids and that sanctuary city laws have gone too far.
I didn't get the partnership from the previous administration. This administration is saying we're willing to help you get dangerous people off your street.
But the cooperation is not happening nationwide. For example, in Santa Cruz, California, near San Francisco. That city reaffirming its commitment to becoming a sanctuary city, saying it will restrict the use of city resources for immigration enforcement. But would you look at this headline in the state of Texas? Big change there. As the Texas Tribune reports, Texas migrant shelters are nearly empty. Joining me now is the former DHS Secretary in the first Trump administration, Chad Wolf, back with us here on the Hill tonight. Chad, nice to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
What do you think the motive is there for Eric Adams? There's a lot going on in that city. There's been a lot of conversation with him. Or do you even think the motive matters at all?
Well, I think he understands that with President Trump, Tom Homan, and the new team in town, that he needs to play ball. Look, I think he understands. He comes from a law enforcement background. I think he understands the need and the desire to get dangerous individuals off of his streets. Now, look, when he had a Biden administration, he got no traction on that front. Now, with the Trump team in place, I think he can start to make some difference in protecting New York City. Now, the biggest question I have is, these are all great words. Let's make sure that the actions are backed up by words, and he allows that cooperation to happen with ICE.
Yeah, do you trust him? I mean, after all, he is the Democratic mayor in New York City.
Again, I think you have to take him at his word. And again, I think the fact that he comes from law enforcement, he has a predilection to cooperate, and he understands what ICE and Tom Homan and others are trying to do. So again, I do accept his word, but I'm going to look for his actions to back those up.
I'm looking at ICE arrests, daily averages, and they are clearly up under President Trump. 636 per day here at the first few weeks of the Trump administration. Compare that to basically most of 2024 and the Biden administration. It's up, I don't know, 70%, whatever that number is. Help me out here, Chad, because I'm looking in Texas, the migrant shelters are nearly empty. The Trump administration is making change there at the southern border, but I also see them requesting $175 billion for border security. Is that the number that's needed if things are as successful as they say it's being?
Well, look, I think they're being successful. And again, we're only really into week 3 or week 4 of the Trump administration here. Or I say apprehensions along the border are down. Arrests in the interior of the country are up. Now, with that comes an immense amount of resources that are needed to detain, to put them in detention space, and then to deport them. But look, just because you've had success the first 3 or 4 weeks doesn't mean that you're going to continue to do that. So I think some of the resources that they're asking for are certainly valid. I think the department, in many sense, has squandered their resources over the last 4 years in providing housing and sheltering for migrants instead of having that money go to actual border security and making sure that we're protecting Americans. So look, I'm not sure what the right number is, but I do know that more resources are needed.
All right, so you were the acting director at the Department of Homeland Security, Chad, as you know, but for our audience here on NewsNation or those listening to us on SiriusXM. There's also, as you know, a big conversation in this town involving Doge. Here was Elon Musk the other day, and I'll get your reaction on the other side.
These things, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical. I think it's really just saying, let's look at each of the expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's not, we should think about it.
Look at each of the actions. It's common sense. When we look under the hood of the Department of Homeland Security, are we going to find some things that we shake our head and say, wait a minute, why is that there?
Oh, undoubtedly, yes. I think in any of these large agencies, and DHS is certainly one of those, There's a lot of money being spent. I think a lot of money that is being spent is probably being spent for the right reasons. And in DHS's case, obviously to protect the homeland. But there's an immense amount of grant money that goes out of the department and other funds that are being spent that are probably not the most efficient or probably being spent on things that are not in line with the president's agenda. So as they dig down into DHS, undoubtedly they will find programs, they will find grant money that don't align with the president's budget and don't make sense, I think, for the majority of American people.
Well, like what? If Elon Musk calls you and says, "Hey, Chad, you know this agency better than most, if not better than all," what
Well, we've talked
might
about
we
it.
find?
I mean, I
and
think you
big?
start with the FEMA grants. FEMA administers an immense amount of grant money. A lot of the sheltering money that was going to NGOs that was housing migrants around the country. You're in the billions of dollars just in that grant program alone. I'm sure they're looking at it, and there are others to look at as well. There's grant programs coming out of DHS headquarters that make no sense that are going to certain left-wing causes. I mean, there are things that maybe not grab headlines the way that Doge is grabbing headlines lately, but I think things that need to be looked at, absolutely.
And anything relating to the southern border?
Well, look, I think you have to dig into that a little bit. I don't know of anything offhand. I think a lot of those resources, particularly when we talk about NGOs and we talk about the transportation of the illegal migrants, my guess is none of that is happening over these last 3 or 4 weeks, that money has either stopped or been reallocated to actual border security along that border and not the facilitation of migrants into the country.
Chad Wolf, former acting head of DHS, always nice to see you and speak with you, Chad. Have a great weekend. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.